ETR, Social Justice Fund, was right there at the very beginning.
We wanted to be out there on the edge of things, and that didn't scare off Social Justice Fund Northwest. It's amazing how a life trajectory of a small grant can change your whole course of life.
I do remember one of the earliest site visits that I went on with PCUN made a huge impact on me. I had the sense that every little action could build on itself.
We broadcast in 3 different languages because 70% of the farm workers here are indigenous.
Ahí estamos escuchando a Guardianes del Amor. Amor se escribe con llanto.
Well, we started organizing back in the mid-70s as a result of immigration raids that took place in the Willamette Valley. In one particular place that immigration hit was a mushroom plant, in which they took over 250 workers. As a result of that raid, a group of community activists got together and wanted to form a community-based legal project that assisted immigrants with legal status. It was a strategic moment in which we received the help of the Social Justice Fund. Because once we got a grant, then we became legitimized.
The land we're standing on now is a battlefield, and so we always laugh and say that we grew up on a battlefield, and that's why we're always fighting. The remarkable thing is that we're still here. Remarkable. Cheyenne people are still here on this land, and we've held it off for all these years. Well, you know, my work in organizing probably really began, you know, very young, because you're feeding the whole tribe. You're organizing for whatever issue it is. Maybe it's a ceremony, maybe it's a tribal election. So I grew up always organizing with my mother. And then as time went on, the coal mines came into the reservation all around us. It was kind of like the early beginning of the missing and murdered Indigenous woman. It was like the coal boomtown hit. I mean, our reservation was like a playground for all the miners. And it was really a group of elders that formed Native Action, and I was the worker. I was being recruited really heavily by the coal mines because I was the greatest resistance on the reservation. So they were trying to buy me off. And it really was like the first monies that came in from a Territorial Resource Foundation that enabled me to stay here.
So these are all files on various right-wing and white supremacist extremists. They're calling themselves something different, but we know who they are, you know, and we need to make sure that we're telling the truth here.
I think the mission really has remained true from when we started to now, and that is to help communities understand and prepare for and respond to anti-democratic forces arising in their communities, whether that is white supremacists to anti-gay rights work.
You know, pretty much at any given time, someone on our staff is helping a community respond to that kind of activity.
Back then, I think, was definitely the first grant that this organization ever got, was from a territory resource. Year after year after year, ATR and then Social Justice Fund Northwest was there for us.
You know, some people think the Muslim ban is a new thing, but in fact we were fighting it back in 2001. All of the threats to civil liberties and civil rights, we needed some funding, and quick funding, from people who believed in what we were trying to do. We probably leveraged that funding from ATR many, many, many more times.
Looking back to the early days, I thought they played an essential role in showing that people from all economic classes had a stake in improving our world, our society, our communities. Even though they themselves had been somewhat privileged or even sheltered from some of the worst discrepancies in society, and yet they had values and perspectives and insights that caused them to truly want to join together and to help support progressive movement building.
Alan and Andrea, I think, were at the core of so much of that. If you look at most of the major grassroots organizations in the area, I think they were involved in one way or another with a finger on the pulse at some point or another. But also coming to our events, you know, really finding out what we were doing and being a part of the thinking and the strategy at different levels. Any moment can be just a moment and not a movement if you don't institute the structures that allow people to grow and a new set of voices to continue to come in.
We started going after the laws that were on the books that prohibited farm workers from organizing. So we went into Social Justice Fund for a grant on that. We launched the first union strike in the history of Oregon agriculture in the summer of 1991 in the cucumber harvest. In this community, it's hard to gain the trust and the confidence of the community, and you had to really prove yourself. You're an organization that not only provided services and helped people get legal status and help reunite their families, but we were also doing policy work on a national level. Throughout our history, the relationship between PCUN and Social Justice Fund has been there in strategic moments for the farm worker movement.
It was actually a 31-year fight to get a local high school on this reservation. ATR funded a lot of that effort so that young people could go to, have a local school to go to and be taught to be proud of who they are. And what opposed it is money. The border towns wanted the federal money that every Indian kid at the time was worth $10,000. They called us out to do a press conference. So we took all the students out and we were on the front page of every statewide newspaper that the Cheyenne kids were demanding their own school. Got word that day at Native Action that the Superintendent of Public Instruction had ruled in our favor. And it was so crazy, like within half hour, they had all the kids in buses going down and parading through Lame Deer Main Street, waving signs, we won, we won. But those students knew the taste of victory. And those students are who are empowered now in leadership. I can honestly say that my entire life growing up on this reservation has been a huge fight. There have been moments of victory, like say winning the high school, but within a day or two, the appeal is filed. And you only have a day maybe to celebrate a victory, then you're back fighting again. We could never win without allies, and that's significant. We need allies, and we need you to be our voice.
think that the biggest impact that I've seen SJF have on people in my life is making them comfortable with fundraising. When you give the people who are most impacted in a room to talk about the issues, we have the best answers and the best solutions to those problems because of our life experiences. And we can talk about the impact of like racism and white supremacy and colonialism on climate change and bring our whole selves to the work, which is exactly what we need right now. I think surface level solutions time is over. So like SJF funds work that's necessary and immediate.
We are facing potential constitutional crises every day. And the thing that gives me so much hope is exactly the actions from the kinds of groups that Social Justice Fund is funding.
At the center of that being the work that it takes to develop our leadership and create a very intentional pipeline of people like me who grew up in Salem, who are kids of farm workers that are now able to actually make a big difference in not just in people's lives, but in the system, in our communities. Like, we are influencers now.
When I'm 90 and like my grandkids are like, oh, what did you do when you were younger? And I'm telling them I got green and like how many hours I worked. And they're like, why'd you do that? And I'm like, because I wanted to create a world where you can grow up and do whatever the hell you wanted and you didn't have to organize for your life and you didn't have to like worry about like talking to police, because at that point we would abolish them. And like just like try to explain to them what the world was like when I was young and then have them be like shocked.